people who they like they have not come. They have gone downstairs and not come. Right, so they have missed the timetable, and my last class finished at 12:35. Right, so that's why I got like a bit. Wow. Okay, so we are going to do a small revision today before like we are going to face the mock exam, right? Which was like much awaited for you, right? You were waiting so badly for this, but we'll like continue to do finish up this dude, like to take around 45 minutes. Then afterwards I'll do a revision, right? So we were where? We were in the financial system, and then I think it's here we have to study central banks. Is that credit multiplier? Didn't we do? Credit multiplier, the equation, this 1 divided by cash ratio, we did discuss, right? No? No, no, did I discuss about that then? I remember that. I remember something like that. Additional reading. So additional reading is anyway, additional reading, so that you can read. Right. Anyway, credit multiplier. Right? So we'll quickly finish this up and then we'll go to the revision session. So credit multiplier. Yeah. So for every deposit made, the bank keeps some in reserve. So like we were last week, like we were into discussing more about how the banks do operate, how the central bank function happens, and anybody should be able to remember that how the monetary policy works, right? How the expansionary and the contractionary monetary policy works, right? So the credit multiplier was, so when somebody goes and deposits money in the bank, right? They are not supposed to lend the entire amount, right? I told you that. So if you like go and deposit 100 rupees, the entire 100 rupees, you can't lend out to the other set of customers. So when it comes to a bank, you have depositors and also you have lenders. So somebody is coming to borrow and also somebody is coming to deposit. So from whatever the amounts you are going and depositing only, you are giving out loans. That's how the banks do work. But to keep an additional, you mean a buffer for like the security purpose, right? You are not supposed to lend the entire amount. So you kept on something. So even though you kept on something, now imagine you go and deposit 100 rupees and then 10 rupees you will keep in reserve, right? 10 rupees you will keep in reserve and you will end up again 90, right? So somebody will go and take that 90, somebody again depositing in the banking system that 90. Then again what happens, from that 90 I'll keep again a reserve of 10%, which is again 9 I'll keep it. Again 81 lent out, right? Now originally what do we do? This 100 rupees. This 100 rupees became 181 and more like that. Because like in the financial system, whoever comes and deposits and whoever borrows and take the money, again that is coming into the financial system. So it's a closed financial system. Unless you can go and invest somewhere in other countries or likewise. That's why the banks has come up with, the central bank has come up with several regulations. You can't, as of your choice, you can't send money outside. Now today you get up and you have a friend in Australia, you think, so I just like send you 1 million rupees, you just invest it there. Can you send it like that? Will the central bank allow? No. You will ask 1001 questions. Why are you sending it? Why are you doing it? Lot of regulations. So because like the financial system is a closed system, as a result, you will not allow that. So similarly, credit multiplier is that the amount kept by the bank is known as the cash ratio, international context, that is cash ratio. in the country we call it statutory reserve ratio, SRR, right? You might have heard statutory reserve ratio. Whatever the amount from the deposit, from the total deposits, whatever the amounts the bank accumulates, the bank have to keep a suitable balance, right? Currently it's at 2%. So that 2% balance needs to be maintained with the central, right? 98% you can go and lend. So as a result, this credit goes on multiplying and multiplying and multiplying for just 100 rupees being deposited, that end up being to 181 and likewise, right? So the rest of money, so this, how this happens was like this, right? So 100 rupees, if 5% was the cash ratio, this became 185, 250, just 100, right? So cash ratio was this, how you get it, credit multiplier, and so on. So to get in touch and to understand more about this credit creation process now, you will be not getting any sort of a question just to explain the credit creation process. You'll be not getting, right? So have an understanding how these things happen, right? How these things happen. You should have a proper understanding if you are learning finance. So for that, I have included a further reading, so you can read. Then one student was also asking me about what's this money printing? Do actually the governments do print money, which is like printing taken in the ship and given in the country? Does that happen? Do we actually print money, physical cash? Yes or no? Yes. So it's good to be government. So why do governments do fail? Why do governments have like tax deficits? So whatever the income the government need, they can print. Just like that uncle did previously. Can the governments print money as they wish? They can print money, but that will lead to some other problems, right? So how money printing happens? Money printing. You can obviously print money. I told you, no? Treasury bills and treasury bonds are considered to be zero risk for the sole factor that the government can print money and pay it off, right? But that is now, each day the government can't wake up and print money now. It's a really rainy day, so why don't we print some money today and give it to the people? You can't do that, right? So for the farmers, so if I'm the president, I decide on printing some money. I'm giving you 100,000 to my students. Don't do SIMA, go to hell and do anything. Government can't do that. So if you go on printing that money, that will end up in inflation. Why? You print money and print money and print money. So this is a closed system. So this is a closed system. When you take the financial market, what will happen if this is the financial market? If this is the financial market, what will happen? Money will come and come. So if people have money like that, if the money supply in the country is like that, what will happen? People have lot of money. What will happen? What will happen to the price levels? Increase. So what will happen? What will happen to the value of the currency? What will happen to the value of the currency? Decrease. Have you watched videos like that? So there are some countries which have experienced this. Have you seen any country? Zimbabwe, Venezuela, right? One loaf of bread, $2 million. One loaf of bread is $2 million. They are carrying like the amount of cash in a wheelbarrow just to purchase a loaf of bread. So if you print on money, if you go on printing, that will lead to inflation. That will happen. So what do the governments do then? How does this happen? So you say, now you can't print money like that. If so, we also will have to, you will have to pay wisdom, like you'll have to bring up a wheelbarrow, cash like this and then pay. Come on, right? Not practical. Even being in 13th floor, it's really difficult. No, so you'll have to. So what governments will do is government have something called open market operations carried out by this central bank, right? So money printing, people mostly do misunderstand. That's what the governments do. That's not money printing actually, right? Some money they do print because like new notes should come. No? So when a new minister comes, obviously money gets printed. Why? When you take a note, if you are the minister and here minister signs, here the central bank governor signs. So imagine I become the central bank governor. So I'll definitely print some money for the country. Why? So everybody is having money notes where I have placed my signature. It's good, no? So if the central bank governor or the minister changes, mostly that will happen. But it's being printed. We have a company that's Dilaro in Kolpeti, right? They do print for the country. Actually, money notes being printed. Apart from that, what will happen is this open market operations. When you take a week, every Wednesday, treasury bills, every Monday or Tuesday, treasury bonds. What the government will do is they end up issuing treasury bills. The governments calculate their treasury budget deficit, right? On a weekly basis, not the budget you hear on the parliament. Every week, my deficit is this. So the government will say, like, I need 195 billion of rupees, billions, right? Not millions, billions. Government decides. So when the government decides, every Wednesday they say, right, today I'm issuing treasury bills. I need 195 billion rupees, right? So there's a particular rule. There are 10 primary dealers in the country. Primary dealers are mostly banks, and then you have First Capital as well, right? So primary dealers, there's a limitation. They will anyway have to purchase 10% of the bills, treasury bill. So whoever who has money, what do they do? Now central bank say, I need 195 billion rupees every Wednesday. This is not the exact amount, changes. So you will come and say, right, I'll give. Right? So what will happen? What do you think the rate that is being offered by the government, what will happen? Now you come and say, right, I'll give you 50 billion, give me 10% back. You need a return? This is not a charity, right? You need a return. So you come and say, I'll give you 25 billion rupees. That's okay. You don't want to give me 10%. You just give me 9.8. Right? Some others will come, 10 billion. Likewise, lot of people will come and say, and from the government's perspective, the rate will go down and down and down and down. So the government will select the lowest rate. So if you are coming and saying, I'll give you 50 billion, you pay me 10%. He is saying me, I'll give you 50 billion, give me 9%. As the government, whom I'll select? I'll select whom? Lower rate. I'll select the lower rate. Right? So likewise, having happened that, ultimately it will end up around 6%, 6.75 like. For this 195 billion rupees, sometimes the demand will be such, there will be like 590 million altogether, all the bids. All the bids, 590. I need only 195. So what I will do, I'll select the lowest rate and will issue the bills. Similar with the bonds. Can I do that? Yes. So when this is reaching the maturity, now treasury bills is with a maturity of a maximum of 1 year. So after 3 months, on that date, I will have to pay. So how can I pay that? Again a treasury bill. Right? To pay that, I will issue another set of treasury bills. So this is the other aspect of money creation. Right? Governments, they issue treasury bills and treasury bonds and they will accumulate money to them. Using that, they will pay the maturing treasury bills or else keep the money for development projects or whatever. And they will go and invest in the financial markets, right? They will go and invest in the financial markets within the country, internationally or whatever, and they will pay the return to whoever who have deposited. Clear? Credit multiplier and money creation is a separate process. So this is how the governments do it. Understood? So using that, now imagine now this everything interconnects, right? So now you have money. Now the government have money. And then I taught you the monetary policy, how can they deal with? So if the government thinks we have money collected from this, I will like lower some interest rates. So I'll have economic boom. Then in the next 3 months, now this is going more than that. So I'll like not raise the of money coming into the market and going away from the market. Who controls? Controls. Don't say government will throw you out from the window. Who? Central bank. They have a monetary policy. They have a monetary policy meeting 8 times in a year. Like, yes, I could remember. 8 times in a year. But using that, they will select. So what are the tools they have? Interest rates. Policy interest rates. They change it using that. They change the interest rates. So accordingly, the inflation rates might change. Accordingly, the exchange rates might change. So how do they get money? Basically through taxation, tax income, and if not, issuance of treasury bills and treasury bonds. Now have you got a broad picture of the financial system? What happens? Did you knew that these things are happening in the country previously? My goodness, printing money, treasury bills. These things happened, right? Even before when I was born in 2000. Right? Even before that only these things did happen in the country. Okay? Right. Next part. Credit multiplier. So this is additional reading for you to read. I know you will read. Right? I'm quite sure you'll be reading. Because that's why I'm inserting all this. You are reading. You want to lot of reading. So amount of credit that banks can create depends on 2 factors. The cash and near cash liquid assets they hold, the size of the credit multiplier. So from time to time, this credit multiplier means from time to time, the central bank might change this. You might see the central bank change in the policy rates, saying statutory reserve ratio was at 4%, then brought down to 2%. Then again brought to 6%. And likewise, that's a tool. So they can change. So basic 2 factors is this. Right? Then comes central bank. So I'll be rushing through because I've been explaining all this monetary policy and all these things, right? Central banks, all countries have a central bank. Agreed or not? Who's agreeing? Some idiot has made this tune. Not all countries have central banks. Check it. Singapore has a central bank. Take whether Singapore has a central bank or not. They don't have. Right? But I have inserted it because why? Almost all the countries. Now, like 99% of the time you have central bank. So you have United Kingdom, Bank of England. Federal Reserve Board means US. Right? Remember in United States, the central bank is Federal Reserve Board, right? Everything is different there, right? In US, everything is different. So, Federal Reserve Board, European Central Bank, Bank of Japan. So, those are central banks. But remember, some countries are not using central bank function. For an example, Singapore is having a currency board. You may check it. That's a currency board, right? That's a different kind of an like structure, but still quite similar with the central bank. But as far as I could remember, they can't print, right? Currency boards. So the main functions of a central bank, right? Banker to the banks, which is banker to the banks. Now commercial bank is banker to us. What do we do? What do we do with commercial bank? Or whatever the bank you are going? We deposit, we borrow. So banker to the banks means Yes. When you take a bank, guys, remember all the time bank does not have money. Now don't think, now you're like grown-ups, no? Right? I assume so. You're, you're a grown-up. So as a result, don't think when you go and deposit money, the bank is going and keeping it in a vault, the every cent you are going to deposit, that is not what happens. So when you go and deposit money in the bank, that money is being invested somewhere else, being given as loans. There are some other operations and likewise, right? So if somebody tells, now imagine somebody, Cristiano Ronaldo comes and saying, you just go to the commercial bank and withdraw all the money you have. Some superpower comes and say. So if every individual who deposited money comes into the bank and asks money, does the bank have? Bank does not have money, right? Because that's not there. Physically, that's not there. And they can't print. So there comes a problem. If a bank needs money, right? If we need money, we can go to the bank and borrow, right? If a bank needs money, imagine there's a huge loan to be dispersed or something like that. What can we do? Right? Banks, they go to the central bank for help. So the central bank will either give money or else take deposits. Now, if a bank has excess cash, they can deposit it in the central bank. You keep, you take it for granted for the government or whatever. So give me a return, by the way. Right? But if you don't have, even the banks can go to the central bank and borrow so that you can pay to the customer. So that is why it's called banker to the banks. Right? Acts as a liquid reserve for commercial banks, facilitate transfers from one bank to the another, rising from the clearing system. Banker to the government. That's quite obvious. Central bank. Central bank is the banker to the government. So if the government needs money, what happens? Yes. If the government needs money, first thing they will cut off our heads and then they will raise the tax revenue. Raise taxes. So if you walk in the road, pay 50 rupees. If you inhale free air being given, pay 50 rupees. Can happen. Right? So tax revenue. Apart from that, if the government needs money, they can issue treasury bills through central bank. So central bank, one function is being banker to the government as well. Then supervision of the banking system. That is supervision. So when you take the banking industry, the father of the family is central bank. So banks should act in the best interest as instructed by the central bank. No matter what the bank is small. Now HSBC is here. Which is big? HSBC or central bank? Central bank is big. You mean the building? I mean, which is big? HSBC or central bank? Our central bank. HSBC. You're not patriotic. Yeah. Our central bank is like a joke to HSBC, you know. HSBC is the world's 7th largest bank. HSBC. When you take the entire world, entire globe, 7th largest bank is HSBC. So assets of HSBC and assets of our central bank, 0 point, any number of zeros, 1%. Right? But that is in the global context. Like, so we are Sri Lankans, no. So any ayah coming here, living inside our country, should be in our roots. So inside the country, can HSBC play their part? Right? You can't do it. This is our country. Right? So HSBC, although it's that big, right? HSBC UK is that big. They can actually purchase Sri Lanka. One single loan purchase Sri Lanka entire. Right? But within the country, they can't do anything beyond the central bank instructions. Whatever the loans they are giving, whatever the credit cards they are giving, whatever the global trade transactions they are doing, whatever the amount of money being taken away from the country, foreign currencies. So since HSBC is international, do you think I can send foreign currency easily? Subjected to rules here. Understood? So these are the normal concerns: capital adequacy and liquidity. Central bank has normally the duty of supervising the financial system and ensuring that the banks in the system meets the requirements. Capital adequacy means what? Actually, you know, capital means capital. Adequacy means adequate. Adequate capital. Is that adequate capital for what? So this is a simple process like this. When you are giving a loan, imagine if you are a bank. So time now. When you are giving a loan, there's like rules. So this is the rules being brought up by the central bank. Actually speaking, when you are giving out a loan to one of your customers, what capital adequacy framework says is, imagine you are giving a housing loan to some poor person like me. 10 million, definitely you can't bring up a house. 10 million. A single storied house, can you? 10 million? I don't think so. Right? So giving a housing loan of 10 million. So how do banks get money to give this 10 million to me is through the deposits where you should make. What capital adequacy framework says is, to give this entire amount of 10 million, you can't use the depositor's deposits. You can't do that. Right? This happened, I think, I don't remember the year, but that happened. And then afterwards, all the central banks of the world got together in Basel, Switzerland, and they got together and came up with several rules. There are frameworks: Basel 1, Basel 2, Basel 3. Basel is a city in Switzerland. There are only all the central bank governors of the world got together and they came up with this capital adequacy framework, which is Basel 1. Then it improved to Basel 2, Basel 3. Now they are going ahead with Basel 4, I don't know. Right? So what they say is, entire amount of 10 million you can't give from the depositor's money. Right? So if you do that, if this customer, now not me, if this customer end up not paying, what will happen? Good luck, I mean, I'll be paying. Right? If this customer is not paying the 10 million worth of money from the depositors go. Clear? So what the Basel framework or the capital adequacy means, they have come up with risk weightages. Right? They have said, if we are giving a loan to one customer, we will define a percentage, like for housing loans, it's 30%. Term loans, it's 50%. Likewise, there are weightages, only that amount you will have to give from your own capital. When you take 10 million, that is actually 35% in the country. So 3.5 million rupees from this 10 million, we should give as a bank, we should give from our own capital. Now, bank as a bank should have some capital. No? Now, when I can't go and form a bank, no, we don't have capital. So if we had like 2-3 billion worth of rupees, we can go and start a bank. First Hindu PLC bank. Come on, you can, right? So you can't do that. So if you are giving a loan like that, only 3.5 million rupees, you will have to give it from your capital. So if some eventuality happens, depositors will lose only 6.5. Correct? Yes. Now understood? This portion should come from bank's capital. That is what you call capital increase. Clear to anyone? Clear? So, not issuance, definitely not issuance. You and I can't. So, Wisdom can't print money. That is the sole authorities with the central bank. Central banks and the monetary policy, I'm not going to say. Do you remember I'm explaining central bank and the monetary policy? Right? So basically a country has two kinds of policies. One is monetary policy, one is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy means collecting tax revenue and the tax system. This is monetary policy. So how do they change interest rates and everything we discussed. So I'm not going to elaborate on that. Right? And right. So here you have a term quantitative easing. Quantitative easing. What do you mean by that? Right? So I have explained these things, but the word I haven't. Banks are required to keep a proportion of their total assets in certain specified assets. Okay, little use now made this most students based on open market operation. One of the main tools the government is lowering or raising. This is important. Lowering or raising interest rates. Low interest rates encourage people to companies to spend money. Right. So government can do two things. I'll recap quickly. Government can do two things, which is they can lower the interest rates. When you lower the interest rates as the government or the central bank, what will happen, guys? Lower the interest rates. What will happen? Initial step, interest rates becoming lower. What will happen? People will pull out the money from the banking system. They will end up spending and spending and spending. Then requirement or the demand for the production, goods and services increases. So in that sense, quantitative easing means interest rates are almost equal to zero. So if the government needs to get up from the very beginning, they will bring down the interest rates to very minimal. We are experiencing that kind of situation in the country. Right? What's the interest rate for the fixed deposits these days? Do you know? It's somewhere around 6-7%. Very low. So what's government's expectation? You can think. Simply, guys, knowing these things, you can come into the TV inside in front of the media and even become one kind of that Arthika Ustar and say, right? So the government has lowered the interest rates. It seems that they are seeking to have economic boom. You know, like the monetary policy as president, you can say, oh, interest rates lowered. That every kid knows this. So can't you become an Arthika, this person? Quantitative easing, same thing. Easy. So interest rates lowered, production of goods and services will increase, right? Many people will start consuming. Industries will have a boom. So when that happens, after some time, what will happen? Can you think? Can, as a government, we keep the interest rates at 6% for eternity? What will you think? What will happen? So you can predict, right? So when the interest rates are this lower, now the companies in the country, you may search in the Google and see 700 billion rupees loans taken by the companies for the last 6 months. 700 billion. Why? What's the rate? What's the reason? Interest rates are lower. So this will go up for some time, but after some time, what will happen? After the central bank's expectation is fulfilled, they will again raise the interest rates. Right? So when you are making a fixed deposit or when you are doing that, this is not magic. You can predict, right? So this is the lower cycle we are going, but near future, they will raise up the rates. Clear enough now? So quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is bringing down the interest rates nearly to zero. right? So, which is like they expect money supply coming into the market. Clear? Right. So, okay, then you have the questions. Financial market. So, we have a question also. So, do we get today's lesson? Upcoming mock exam? No. I told you, no? 3:59 p.m. last. No questions from this thing. I don't know now. This dude has, about financial system, money market policy, and all these things. I don't know. I can't help with that. Right? But definitely no questions from this dude. Did you get my word? No questions from this dude. I don't know, but this dude has about financial markets and central bank. No. It's a very easy one. It's basically about demand, supply, price mechanism, price elasticity of demand, and likewise. Right? No hard questions. Okay. Money markets. Right. I don't want to. Stock markets, equity markets. Right here. Did I explain the difference between primary market and the secondary market? What was it? Primary market, what happens? Issuing new. Okay. You can call it treasury bills and bonds. That's okay. So initially, primary market is where the initial issuance happens. Right? So when initial issuance happens, I told you, central bank issuing treasury bills and bonds. So all the primary dealers and the major banks will go and get. Secondary market means trading. So there, any new issuance will not happen. Right? Already issued financial products is being traded in the secondary market. So if I need to quit, I can sell my financial product, I can sell my treasury bill, and I can quit. I can get my money. Somebody else will get it. Understood? So that's it. I don't think there's more. All right. I think that's the end, right? Apart from that, you have questions from this point. Question number 5 onwards, all questions, right? Isn't it? Okay. So, right. You may leave it. Now we'll go for a quick revision day. Since you are so worried about the mock exam. So, just read this tube, right? I have completed because like in India, I have explained the monetary policy, financial markets, all these bond markets, stock markets, everything. Right? I told you, I'm into like teaching you finance and economics, not basically BA1. So I have completed this. So the questions we'll be doing in the next this thing. Next class we'll be having the questions, entire set we'll do, and then we'll complete. So revision. So what do I need to do in the revision? What are you expecting me to do? Yes. Have you got questions to ask from me? Or can I ask questions from you? Then he said definitely no. Then you have got questions to ask from me, is it? What am I supposed to do? What do other lecturers do when they say it's a revision? Goes on explaining from the scratch. Is it? Right. Okay. Quick discussion, right? So basically, this mock exam is like, it's really not difficult, easy, right? It's easy. So you'll be getting 30 questions. So not much of calculations. So it tests basically, remember, how will you face the exam? Tests basically how will you face the exam, and definitely not the type of questions coming into the exam. Right? Simple questions which will test your theory knowledge. So you may read whatever the stuff we did, right? Just read it once. Don't take it like a huge pressure. I know you won't. Right? And do the questions. And what I need to highlight is, you know, why they have planned and I have planned like giving in a mock exam in the middays. You need to understand what are the challenges you'll have to face, right? Facing only. So like imagine now, imagine you are an athlete, right? You will have to run for 100 meters. That's your challenge. That's your game. If you don't know about the track, if you don't know about whether you should wear shoes or not or whatever, if you don't know about the challenge, basically you are failed. At the very first point, you are failed because you don't know about the challenge. That's one point I'm stressing out in my class, right? So I'm not like starting from the lesson. This is students, this is like, this is apple, this is orange. You should know the challenge first. So this mock exam will be an eye opener for you how to face it, because you will be having like 1 hour to do it. Just 1 hour. 1 hour, 30 questions. First thing is time management. So firstly, try to do the entire 30 questions. That's one challenge. But doing the 30 questions won't help. Do it correctly. So you will have difficult questions, you will have simple questions. So you will have to select, right? I know I want you to be so professional and methodical, but don't go and do question number 1, 2, 3, 4 is really difficult. You spend half an hour in question number 4. So I'm so methodical. If I can't do question number 4, I won't be doing from here onwards. Don't do that. Select the easiest questions and score a maximum. Right? That's what we expect. Right? Because like we have covered only 25 to 30% of the syllabus. Right? So giving a mock exam from that is nuts. But still, should be an eye-opener. I'll be explaining what are the exam techniques you have to face. I'll be explaining the 30 questions in the next class. Right? So give it a try. Everybody should try. Everybody should score a maximum. And that's an eye-opener. So in our lesson, initially, what we started off discussing was about organizations, right? So I'll like rush through all the areas as you need. So I hope what you expect is to go through each and every tude and tell every shit I told in that every tude. So you will be like listening. Wherever applicable, you clap. Huh? I'll explain, you clap. That's what you need me to do, right? You clap, or if you like, you can do whatever. Stupid. Right? Organizations and stakeholders. We started discussing about organizations and stakeholders. So, organization had 3 components. That should be a social arrangement. There should be controlled performance, and there should be collective growth. Whatever group of people, right? Whatever group of people having these 3 components can be considered as an organization, right? There should be a social arrangement, there should be a controlled performance, and also there should be a collective goal. So why do we need to get together in organizations rather than doing something in individual basis, was to get this kind of advantages. So why can't we think of doing something all alone rather than going for organization? Why do we do that? Yes, different people have different skills. So somebody may be able to sing, somebody able to dance, whatever. So a set of people getting together with different skills will make up a proper band. Similarly, right? So share skills and knowledge, specialize, pool and coordinate resources, and ultimately, imagine there's a group where 5 people are there. 4 people have skills. 5th one is good for nothing, like us, right? So even in that sense, that person might grasp lot of skills being in that group. So he will learn how to do this work from this person, right? So skills. So share skills and knowledge, specialize, pool and coordinate resources, and likewise. So then we came to types of organizations. Types of organizations could be divided into two, basically using two criterias. Based on the ownership and control, we could do it, and based on profit orientation. So classifying organizations by ownership and control, we could do it as public sector and private sector organizations. Whatever the part of the economy concerned with providing basic government services and is thus controlled by government became public, right? Police, military, whatever. True that some politicians can control, but ultimately governments do control all this. So they became public organizations. Whatever not controlled by the government became private sector organization. Then classifying organizations based on profit orientation, most of 99% of the organizations on the earth are profit seeking. They seek some profit. So if not, there are not for profit seeking organizations as well. But even though, having said that those are not profit seeking, they still has financial constraints. So they just need to have financial budgets. What do they do with their membership subscriptions? How are they going to spend it? They have financial constraints, but primary motive is not profit orientation. So kept on discussing about that. So this important. So getting to know about public sector organizations, there's no point in learning about the police and the army personnel or whatever. No? So we just need to, being finance students, we need to focus about profit-seeking organizations. So profit-seeking organizations, apart from that private sector, would be divided into two as unincorporated and incorporated. Incorporated means business. So unincorporated means the law does not recognize a difference in between. So something, I gave an example. If something happens, a sole trader, right? There's a small fly in the bread you are selling, right? So a customer is going in front of the courts and suing you out. Then you go into the courts and say, so true that I'm the sole trader. There was a fly in my loaf of bread which I sold. I can't help you. You can't say. Because why? There's no difference in between the business and the person. Such stuff is sole trader and partnership. So there's no difference in between, right? Sole trader and partnership. Sole trader means only one person in the business. Two people or more getting together, forming a business would create a partnership. Then incorporated businesses, in that basically private limited or public limited, what you have, the interest you have is limited, right? The liability you have is limited. As a result, we call them private limited companies, which is we being the directors, we have invested, we are our whatever the stake, that's limited, private limited. So shares may not be offered to the public, shares may be offered to the public. So stock market, even we discussed in detail, you can go into the stock market and using initial public offering of flotation process, you can put that in the share market. So when you put that in the share market, general public can go and purchase shares. So those companies are public limited liability. If you are not putting that into the public, imagine people in the family getting together and forming the business, that is known as private limited liability companies. So we discussed the details about it, partnerships and mutual organization. So VFM, that was like VFM theory was about getting to know about the profit-seeking orientation in not-for-profit organization. So this is like for the reading purpose, economy, efficiency and effectiveness, you just have to remember. Right. What else was there? Stakeholders. When you take a stakeholder and shareholder, what's the difference? Okay. Who is big? Stakeholders or shareholders? Stakeholders is big, which is shareholders itself is a stakeholder. So whoever the person going into a company investing in the shares of a company who is having a stake, right? Who is having a stake in that company, we call it not stakeholder, shareholder, right? So we can't say having a stake is stakeholder, the word is interest, right? Anybody who is going into a company investing in the shares, shareholder. Any person who is having an interest in the strategy of the business is a stake. Stakeholders include investors, community, trade unions, government, customers, creditors. Anybody. Right? Anybody having a what? Interest in the strategy of the organization. Remember the word. Anybody having a stake? Not. Right? String. So stakeholders. Then we came up. I told you there are three kinds of stakeholders: internal, connected, then external. Internal means intimately connected to the organization. Connected means having a contractual relationship. So external means have diverse objectives, right? So this is this diagram. If you can remember, this includes the example for everybody. External, internal, and connected. Right? Then stakeholder conflict. Then we came into an important area now where people are involved. Everywhere we find it conflict. Right? If people are there, it's conflict. Right? In the forest, there are no conflicts. No. Obviously, a lion would go and kill a person and eat. That's it. No conflict. No conflict. But in the human society, everywhere conflicts. And when it comes to the female version of it, worse. Conflicts. You know, right? I'm not telling, but this is how the world goes, right? Everywhere human involved, conflicts. As a result, everywhere stakeholders come into play, stakeholder conflict, right? So the basic stakeholder conflict we kept on discussing was what? Principal and the agent problem, right? So stakeholder conflict is due to basically stakeholders' interest in it and the stakeholders' influence. Accordingly, some fellow called Mendelov came up with a strategy how to deal with the stakeholders, considering the two parameters, stakeholder power and stakeholder interest. So if the interest and the power is less, it's minimal effort, just kick them out and don't vote, right? So if the power is really high and the interest is less, anyway keep them satisfied. So if the interest is really high, just like the environmental groups, but the power is less, keep informed. If the power and the influence is really high, key players. This is Mendelow's matrix, right? So stakeholder conflict, there were two parameters basically, that was stakeholder influence and the stakeholder power. So to deal with that, we came up with Mendelow's matrix, how to deal with this. And then the basic stakeholder conflict we kept on discussing was principal agent problem. The principal agent problem, principal was the legal owners of the organization, agent. Now, when it comes to a large company, shareholders might be investing hugely in this company, but shareholders will not be going and putting effort in managing this, right? I'll be like going and investing in one company. So to manage this, I'm putting down my agent. He is my director, right? So Dhammika Pereira in the country is like having shareholding in 370 plus companies, but he is not the director. On his behalf, he has put some directors into the director board. So they are managing the business on behalf of the shareholder. But then again, human means conflicts, right? So I'm being like appointed by Mr. Dhammika Pereira as the director. So I have my own interest. He says, make profits, and give it to me. Okay, as I will not. I have my own interest. I will make profits, and I'll get my bonus. Not to Dhammika, to me. He has enough for me. Right? So my interest. And I have entire set of employees working. I'll have to think of them. Right? They say they need leave, they need bonus, they need this, they need that. I have to think of. So I have my own interests rather than the profit maximization incentive. So problem arises. Principal agent. So principal going this way, agent going that way. Right? So how to deal with that? How to deal with principal agent problem? We discussed that management can give like link the bonus schemes, right? So then focus on whatever we discussed. Several stuff we can do. We can say to the directors, now you achieve this profit, I will give you this much. So he will be encouraged. Like, and then fat cat salaries, all this, you know. Corporate governance. What was corporate governance, by the way? That's one part of it, not the basic definition. That's coming inside of the corporate governance. Yes. If somebody, if a little guy comes and asks, we are going into a SEMA class, right? SEMA is into finance, and the small one comes when you are going home and asking, okay, oh, you, whoever. So our teacher was telling about corporate governance of this thing. So what do you mean by it? Something like that can happen when you go in, right? So what can you say? Yeah, don't say that. Don't want corporate governance. You can't say that. You can't say that. So you'll have to give an answer. So corporate governance is a huge, complex stuff. This is you don't know, right? Corporate governance is it's corporate, right? It's corporate, so little ones don't want. That's not right. So give a proper answer. Corporate governance means simply how the companies are being managed. Who manage the companies, by the way? Directors. So corporate governance is for whom? Basically directors. Corporate governance is the means through which a company is being governed. A company is being the way in which somebody can have chairman and the CEO, the same person. That is not accepted, right? So CEO and the COO is the same. There is no CFO, right? Many things. There is no COO, but the chairman has 3 secretaries. Private secretaries. Chairman has 3, no COO. Conflict again. Lot of stuff, right? So corporate governance deals with that. So we very clearly discuss what are the basic objectives of the corporate governance. So that is to avoid corporates falling down, and then the basic features of the UK corporate governance code we discussed. Because we are supposed to be living in UK and we are doing a UK qualification. You could have done chartered accountant Sri Lanka, but you have selected UK this thing. So live like you are living in UK. Right? So that was it. Then we came to what? Tute number 2. At least the tute topics. Yes. Managing returns. So as shareholders, right? As shareholders, you had 2 sides of the return. What are the two sides of the return? Shares. Yeah. Dividends and the capital gain. So you'll be getting anyway dividends, right? And apart from that, the share price might rise over time, which will lead to a capital gain. So there are 2 sides of the return you will be getting. So in here, in tute number 2, measuring share returns, we discuss both the sides, right? Both the sides needs to be accounted for, and how to measure the return we came up. And then what are the 2 basic metrics we used? Anybody who remember? Two basic financial ratios of measuring shareholder return. ROCE and EPS. Yes. So return on capital employed and then earnings per share. What was the basic difference? Basic difference in between? Obviously, the letters are different. Then apart from that, yes, the basic difference was ROCE was considering the return for the entire capital, right? For the entire capital you were thinking of. So whatever the capital you put, entire return, but to the ordinary shareholders, right, preference shareholders, debt holders, to whoever. But EPS, only the ordinary shareholder, right? Don't be violent, right? Okay. So ROCE, the equation of calculating ROCE, how could you do? Measures of performance, short-term measures and the long-term measures. Short-term measures was, and by the way, remember this as well, right? P&L format, very important because you are into finance. If you don't know the P&L format, obviously you can jump from here. Right? So this is return on capital employed. Simple. Return on whatever the capital you employ. So whatever the capital, average capital employed, profit before interest and tax. Remember this, profit before, right? So whatever the interest and tax being paid, whatever the operating profit you gain, divided by average capital employed will give you ROCE. So average capital employed can be calculated using these two manners, right? Utilizing the basic accounting equation, I explained it to you. How do you take these figures, right? So remember, if you can use this, that's totally okay. Long-term debt plus equity, or else you can use total assets minus the current liability part of it. Then we came to the EPS. EPS was only ordinary shares issued. Here we took profits after, right? So that's about it, the short-term measures. And the long-term, in the long term, how can you measure the return? That was basically taking the present value of future cash flows, right? Remember, you can say sadhu. I have been preaching all this. Now, once in a while, you can say, you're so comfortable, no, listening to all these things. See after this. Right. Then, worst part, demand, supply, and the price mechanism. I'm not going to repeat. I'll give you a small briefing, right? So, they gave me the can't be. Right. So demand and the supply, right? Again, a little kid comes and asks, what's demand? What do you mean by demand? Again, you can't say demand. It's a huge topic. You economists talk about demand and supply. You fool. Go. You can't do that. Simply, so what is demand? Yeah. There are two sides of the economy. One demands something, so other party has to supply. So there are two parties basically, consumers and producers, right? Consumers are there, producers are there. So consumers keep on demanding this, I need this, I need this. I need 3 cameras in my phone, or I need 2 cameras in my phone. I need to eat, I need to do whatever the shit in this, like, so several demands. Accordingly, supply comes, right? Accordingly, the supply do comes. Right? Think of like, go and search about the technologies about 3D printing, right? Go and search about 3D printing. You can print whatever you need. Technology. going up to that level. So as a result of the demand, then you have the supply. So when you take the demand, we just need to learn about demand, and there are several factors which is affecting demand. So we kept on talking about the demand, taking one factor at once. So at the beginning, we are thinking of we started learning about the demand, keeping what factor constant? What are the factors which were kept constant? Demand factors. Yes. So we firstly wanted to understand the relationship between the demand and the price. Right? So that was law of demand. We just wanted to understand about the change which would happen in terms of the price and the demand, keeping every other factor constant. How will demand change in terms of price? Right? So we kept on these types of economies we don't want, right? So demand, demand and the price had this kind of a relationship. Demand and the price had this kind of a relationship. Then we kept on discussing about the demand, and then we drew something called the relationship. We drew it like this, the demand curve. So here remember, if in a question you are asked, price and the quantity demanded relationship shown in a graph, very importantly, keeping every other factor constant. That is this demand, right? So if every other factor is kept constant, if the demand going this way, now this is the demand curve. If the demand is reducing, right? If the demand is reducing, keeping every other factors constant, we call it contraction. If the demand kept on increasing, keeping every other factor constant, we call it expansion, right? And then we studied the relationship between the price and the demand, keeping every other factor constant. Then we kept on asking, what are the conditions? What are those conditions? Right? So you have several conditions. Income, right? I'm not going to explain what happens when income, this and that, no, right? So income, tastes and preferences, prices of other goods, population. Is that all? Yes. Right? So several conditions. Now, in the second part, initially we studied about the price and the demand, keeping conditions constant. Second part, price kept constant and the difference between relationship between demand and the components. So when that happened, the diagram or the demand curve moved in this manner or this manner, right? Moving this way or moving this way. Moving this way, demand is increasing or decreasing? Demand is increasing. Moving this way, decrease. Clear? So that was about the demand. So the demand curve going like this. And the factors, basically, what are the factors? You just remember. Right? And then elasticity. What was elasticity? No. Elasticity. What is elasticity? Elasticity. I'm asking what is general elasticity. Both of you said that is price elasticity. Elasticity means responsiveness of one factor, one variable in terms of the change of the other factor, the other variable. Basically elasticity. Price elasticity of demand, true. That is the change happening in the demand in terms of the change in price. When you change the price, what will happen to the demand? So price elasticity of demanded How can you calculate percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price? So you can calculate that. So we just wanted to quantify, because you can't, like when it comes to a company, you can't say if you increase the price, this will go down, demand will go down. If you decrease the price, demand will go up. That will not add value. So when it comes to a company, you need to calculate that and quantify. If I bring my price from $5 to $5 to $2, my demand will rise from this number of units. So quantification was required, was mandatory, and as a result, we had two methods, arc method and the point method. Point method was quite out of the syllabus. So arc method we had to focus. So we had average arc method and the non-average arc method. So you remember the difference of calculating average arc and the non-average arc? Percentage change taken. In the non-average arc, you are taking final minus initial divided by initial. If that is average, final minus initial divided by. All clear? Then what? Then unitary elasticity, elasticity, and inelasticity. So I'll take some time there. When you draw a demand curve, right? Now don't like listen to this like Greek. This was like explained in your previous soul. Right? When you take the demand curve like this is one demand curve. This is another demand curve. Both are demand curves. If I say A, if I say B, right? Which one is more elastic? You're going? Feel bored? Then? Where? You're not right. I'll check on that. Right. Because I feel irritated because like you are feeling bored and you are leaving like that. Right? Yeah, my previous class closed that. Right. All right. Okay. Okay. So elasticity. Which one is more elastic? A is elastic. All agreed? How can you interpret that? How can you interpret? I just need to interpret this one is more elastic. How? So you can simply draw lines. If you draw the change, right? This is the change in price, right? This is the change in quantity demand. Okay. Here if you draw the same monster, price change is large, quantity demanded changes in a very small manner, right? So for a small price change, if the quantity demanded changes drastically, that is called elasticity, right? So perfectly elastic means like this. Perfectly elastic. Perfectly inelastic means like this. So if this is unitary elastic, it is like this. Now clear? Right. Then what? Unitary elasticity. Then the questions, no? PD and the gradient and the revenue. Here, which line was more elastic? A, B. Which one was more elastic? Why? Silent? Yes. A or B? I'm asking this one. No, these are parallel lines. Right? Elasticity. So we learned about it, right? We calculated because of this change in the base, right? Because of this change in the base, here, generally a curve further from the origin, here, curve further from the origin will tend to be less elastic, right? The basic reason is, so if you read this example, you will get to know, if you calculate the gradient, because of the change in the base, when you go like this and this, it becomes less elastic. It becomes inelastic. Okay, so that also we discussed. Then what additional PD? We had several factors which affected demand. So conditions of demand, several factors, which was income, taste and preferences, population and whatever. Factors affecting price elasticity of demand, several other factors, right? So proportion of income spent, substitutes, necessities, habits, time. I think I explained how every factor changes. Okay, so you may go back and see. So then, is there anything important? We'll go to supply part. Now you know about demand, right? Then we'll look at supply, right? So one part of the economy do request more and more goods and services. So kept on demanding. So the other part, you will have to supply. So those are the producer supply. So when it comes to the supply curve we have seen, it was like the other way around, just like the demand. Supply curve of an industry, it was like this. And then just like we did for the demand, we were like starting to consider the relationship in between price and the supply first. What are we keeping constant? All the conditions. So similarly, if we keep all the conditions constant and if we like think of price and the quantity supplied on the same line, the movements we can understand, which is contraction and expansion. So then after we are going to learn about if you are changing the condition, price kept constant, conditions do change. Then what we call it, then shifts in the supply curve to the left side or to the right side. If it's happening for the left side, decrease in supply or increase in supply? Decrease in supply. This side, increase in supply. So a decrease in supply and the increase in supply I have explained very clearly. And the factors of production, what are the four factors of production? Land, labor. I hear land, labor, capital, and from your side, what's it? Partnership, enterprise, right? Four factors. Okay. Then the elasticity of supply, similarly, right? Similarly, inelastic, elastic, and unitary elastic supply, right? This was what we discussed, and then all the differences. What was there apart from that? The Simon non-average and the arc method, average arc method and the non-average arc method. So then I'll explain a bit about equilibrium. So when you draw the demand curve, right? When you draw the demand curve and the, right? This is quantity demanded or supplied. This is price. This curve is what? Demand or supply. This curve is demand. Supply. Right? Demand and the supply. So this point was what? This point was called as equilibrium point. This was the equilibrium price and this was the equilibrium quantity. So any market may reach an equilibrium in terms of the demand and supply. Any market. So if a disequilibrium happens, right, what will happen? You will have to interpret and keep. Imagine one particular market is in equilibrium and the price we maintain is P1. Price we maintain is P1. Equilibrium price is P. Explain to me What will happen here? Because you will not get question like that, explain what will happen. But if you can explain, you are thorough. If the price is P1, what will happen? Step by step, think. What will happen? How can you start? Before that, step by step approach, what can you do? If the price is P1, firstly draw a line in the market. Draw a line in the market. That's the first one. Right? Then how can you go and interpret? Price P1 reaches the demand curve somewhere here. Right? Which is demand curve is here. Quantity I can say. So firstly, what did you do? Draw a line in the market. Right? Go to the market and draw a line first. Right? Initially. Then only identify the quantity. This is what quantity demanded, because this is the demand curve. Right? This is what quantity supplied. What can you tell about the quantity supplied and the quantity demanded? Excess supply. So you can see in the number line from 0, this is going like this. So quantity supplied is bigger than the quantity demand. So which is what? There are like many stuff being produced. Let's say biscuit packets, right? Lot of biscuit packets being produced, but we don't like it. Right? So what can you do to arrive at the equilibrium? This is how step by step how you think, right? So again, what's the first thing to do? Draw a line in the middle. Then you can identify the quantities. Then the quantity supplied is high. So if the quantity supplied is high, think practically. What can you do? So now looking at this, right? Looking at this, only things you can do is you can change the price. Only thing. Change. So if the supply is high and the demand is less, what will you do? Demand and the price. Which sort of relationship? Inverse. So if you need to increase the demand bit, what can you do? Reduce the price. So if you reduce the price from P1 to P, when you reduce the price, demand will move to this side, right? Quantity demanded will increase, which will come into equilibrium point and match with the supply. Those who understood? I should not ask that question. You could have understood that few weeks back. I just asked. Right? I don't need to ask, do I understand? Because you could have understand that few weeks back. Okay? Now clear. Again, next part. Similarly, price is P2. What are you going into the market and doing first? Go the left. Now interpret. Right. So when it's P2 line drawn means now here this is what? This is supply curve. This is supply. So quantity supplied is less. Quantity supplied is less. Quantity demanded is lot of people demand. But you have very limited supply. What can you do? So all thing you can do is change the price. So how can you change the price to arrive at the equilibrium? Yes? Yes. So price will be increased to P. So quantity supply. So quantity demanded, what will happen? Will come down. Understood now? Equilibrium and everything. So I think this is what we discussed under next tute, isn't it? Equilibrium. So factors affecting, so this I can't help. These things obviously you will have to remember, right? So I can't help with that. Factors affecting. So that is that, and then the shifts and movement along, that's it. The price mechanism was the last one. Right, under price mechanism, I think this is what we discussed, right? How do these things change? I check the tute guide. Apart from that, what do you need? What do I need to explain further? Price mechanism tute. Somebody give me one. What else you have? Shortage, surplus. I explained. Shifts. Then the public goods and all this. Better read it. Public goods and yes. Minimum price, maximum price. Do you need it? Explain. Okay. Okay, we'll see about that. Maximum price, and then this economies of scale, and then the questions. Okay, let's see. All right. Market failure. So market failure was arriving at that disequilibrium. So how externalities and all these things do happen. So public goods had two main properties as non-excludability and non-rivalry. You remember the example. I do not want to pay the light bill of Mr. Vikram Singh. Remember I told you? I don't like it. Anyway. So that I told you, public goods. And what was the basic difference in between merit and demerit goods? Merit and demerit goods? Yes. Demerits? Negative. Right? So demerit goods, like those are having negative externalities and positive externalities. Considering that, we discussed about the merit and the demerit goods. And market failures. So whatever this stuff said in the tute, further reading, additional reading and all this, that is actually not for me to read in here. That is for you to read at home, right? So don't expect that I'll be reading it in the class. So then merit goods. Yes, this minimum price in this here, no? Minimum price and the market. Mergers, acquisitions, market prices. Here. Is this? Right. Minimum price. We'll see. Minimum price is methods used by the governments to ensure a minimum price for the goods and services. Providing subsidies directly to the producers, setting a legal minimum price. We obviously do this here in the country for paddy, right? Since rice being our staple dish. So we are setting a minimum price. To be effective, legal minimum prices must be above the current market price. If the government sets a minimum price above the equilibrium price, often called the price floor, there will be a surplus of supply created. So, by setting a minimum price, what the government will expect is what? setting a minimum price for paddy, what does the government expect? Benefit to whom? Can the government think of the benefit of the customer, the benefit of the farmers, or the benefit of the general public? Can government think of the benefit solely to the farmers? Can the government think of the benefit solely to the consumers? You can't do that. Two sides of the economy, anyway governed by the government. So, by setting a minimum price, you can see, right? If the government sets a minimum price above the equilibrium price, often called the price floor, there will be a surplus of supply created. So, if a surplus of a supply can be created, who will be benefited? Who will be benefited? Only the consumers, only the producers, or both? Think. Both, I can say. So if there's a huge supply of our staple dish rice, so that's good. So we can enjoy it at a minimum price as the general public. And also as they have a huge supply, producers also will be benefited. So even at a lesser price, they are selling a lot. So similarly, because of that, if the equilibrium price is here, you know what equilibrium prices is. If you draw the demand and the supply curve, the minimum price will be set here, above the equilibrium. Now, as I explained, they have already drawn the line on the market. Now explain what has happened. Excess supply or excess demand? Excess supply or excess demand? Excess supply. So there's an excess supply. So in the diagram, this surplus is the difference between Q2 and Q1. Q2 means supply. Q1 means the demand. When considering the minimum price, right? So there's an excess supply. Gradually with time, what will happen? To match this, to bring down this into the equilibrium, gradually what will happen? Price will be again even beyond the minimum, the price will have a downward pressure. The price will have a downward pressure, right? To reach the equilibrium price. So is it good or not? That is good for an essential good like that, right? So if this minimum price was applied in the labor market, it would be known as a minimum wage, and the surplus would be equivalent to the unemployment. That's not. If applied to the physical goods, then the price flows cause surplus of products which have to be stored or destroyed. Government imposed minimum price may cause excess supply, misallocation of resources, waste of resources, right? Longer term, government sets minimum prices. Now, you have to, like, what we have to understand is, we had three types of economies. What are the three types of economies we had? Pre-market, then command economy, then mixed economy, right? So the best thing we could do as per economics, but the best thing we could do is, we can allow the demand and supply to decide on this, isn't it? So if we go and make an interruption, if we create minimum prices or maximum prices or whatever, that will give a benefit in the shorter run, but in the longer run, that will create a problem. In the shorter run, thinking of the benefit to the general public, we can create a minimum price. We can create a minimum price. Apart from that price, the suppliers can't sell, right? But ultimately, in the longer term, see what has happened. To bring this now, any of these items in any of these markets, they reach a natural equilibrium, considering the demand and the supply. So if people do demand more and more and more and more of paddy or rice, so the price will go up and it will come to equilibrium. So if it is being artificially managed by putting a minimum price, ultimately it's true that majority will be benefited, But ultimately, what will happen to the supply? What will happen to supply? So having the excess supply, as they create an excess supply, suppliers will again tend to decrease the price. Why? They have a lot of supply. Or else they'll have to dispose. So the impact of creating a government imposed minimum price will be negative in terms of the who? Supply or the producer? Supply. For the consumer, it's good. So we are having rice cheap as possible. But the next part of the economy, gone for six. Right? Opposite of that. Maximum price. Governments may seek to impose maximum price controls or price ceilings on certain goods or services, either to benefit consumers on low income so that they can afford the particular good to control inflation. See, equilibrium price is here, maximum price is here. Which is high? Demand of the supply? Which one is high? Demand is high. So you have a very small supply, demand is excessively high. So with time, in the longer run, what needs to be done to arrive at the equilibrium? Increase the price. See? Apart from this maximum price, you will have to increase the price. Upward pressure on the price. So see, this shortage is the difference between Q2 and Q1. If the shortage of supply persists, then problems can arise. Accordingly, government imposed maximum prices may cause, but shortages of supply, arbitrary ways of allocating a product and misallocation. So, natural mechanism of arriving at the demand and the price, demand and the supply equilibrium is the better. No matter what the government imposes a minimum price, no matter what the government imposes a maximum price, that will end up in disaster. Clear enough? Clear to you guys? Okay? Right. So what else? Economies of scale, do I need to explain? Economies of scale. So what was economies of scale? Remember, economies of scale means definitely linked to the output. Okay? Definitely linked to the output, also known as increasing returns to scale, are defined as reductions in unit average costs caused by increasing the scale of production. Right? Increasing the scale of production in the long run. Larger firm may be able to gain greater discounts when purchasing raw materials. That is economies of scale. So diseconomies of scale means similarly. So economies of scale means when you increase the output level, you enjoy some additional benefits. Right? So when you take cake, right? A cake is cheaper in a huge hotel, like let's say Galadari or Hilton or whatever. A cake is cheaper there or in a definite significant cake shop. Where's the cake cheap? You know cakes, guys. Cake, you know. Cake. Cakes can be in cake shops. Exclusively selling cakes. Okay. Then cakes you can also purchase from all the hotels surrounded here. Where do you find cheaper cakes? Cheaper means price is less. Go the hill and find out. Is that your answer? Just, this is life. Yeah. Where do you think? In Hilton? Cheap. Then? Cake shop. Go and purchase cakes and see. Go and ask from two big hotels. Tell them that I told. They don't know me anyway, right? Tell them your lecturer, bloody lecturer, wanted to ask about the cake price. And then you go to some place where exclusively they sell cakes, right? And ask the cake price. Right? It's most of the time, right? I have experienced, right? It's cheaper in huge hotels. Yes. That is economies of scale. Check for yourself. This is practical. Now, don't bring two cakes. This was this, this was this. You are telling like, I'm telling about theory, right? So theoretically, and I have experience also, right? So you go to Hilton and they see, you can buy a cake somewhere around 6,000, 7,000. You can buy a cake, right? I'll tell you my birthday so you can bring, right? So if you go to a cake shop, starting from now, so this is 12,000, this we have like done. This is 15,000 and like. So why is that? Reason is economies of scale. When manufacturing cake in such kind of a large hotel, they do purchase raw materials in bulk. They can experience discounts, right? They are not going into the market and purchasing exo whatever ingredients which is required to manufacture a cake in just small numbers, right? They just purchase at huge number. Now, for a day, 10,000 eggs, and right? So like a large quantities. So as a result of that, they can manufacture those stuff at lower price. But when you go to a cake shop, they are manufacturing just, let's say, 20 cakes for a day. So their cost is high. They don't have discounts that much. You think you and I doing a cake shop going in to purchase these things, and Cinnamon going into this and purchase this thing. What do you think? Can you understand? That's a good example of economies of scale, right? Because of the output, because of these discounts or whatever they are experiencing, they can be cheap. They can sell cheap. Because why they are not doing that practically, they are adding up some other ingredient, which is their reputational factor. That's why. Right? Now, the cake can be manufactured at 2,000 rupees. But you can't go into the market and say, see, I have bought your birthday cake from Hilton, 2,000 rupees. So come on. Right? So they're adding some reputational factor as well. Their cost is 2,000, selling at 8,000 or 9,000. Still cheaper than these things. Did you understand the logic? Yes? Right. Right. Implications for the businesses and what else in that youth? Now it's your turn, right? So tell me what do I want to explain? Yes. Anything? Anything else from this? No. Right. Then is the end of the first part. Somebody joining online? What do I need to explain for you guys? Please put in the chat box so that I can help. Wherever unclear. Moving into the financial system. Right? From we had only 2 tudes, no? So whatever you need to clarify. What are the types of markets we have apart from fish market and fruit market? Yes, money market, and then? So you always have couples, right? I mean markets. Couples, right? Money market 10, capital market. Primary market 10, secondary market. Share market 10, bond market, right? So basic differences. What's the basic difference between money market and the capital market? Short term and the long term. So money market are the instruments where it's with a maximum tenor of 1 year. So what are the money market instruments, you know? Money market instruments, you know? Treasury bills, perfect. Certificate of deposits, short term fixed deposits. Then what are the capital market instruments, you know? Yes. Treasury bonds. Yes. Can I say long-term loans? Yeah. Mortgage bonds, long-term loans, can I say? Capital market. Right? So capital market can be debt and equity both, right? So as a result, that can be treasury bonds, treasury, treasury bonds, sovereign bonds, right? Long-term loans, likewise. So when you take a financial system, who are the basic participants with the sole responsibility of keeping its stability? Financial markets. Who are the participants for a financial market? Good. Stock exchanges and money markets I can help with. Apart from that, financial markets. Who are the participants? Financial institutions. Then stock exchanges, money markets, general public, part and parcel. No? Financial market? Yes. We are a part and parcel of the financial market. Be proud. We pay taxes, and that's how the government raises revenue. So the government, is that a part of the financial market? No. Yes, everybody. Central bank, everything. So financial system consists of these things: financial markets, financial institutions, assets and liabilities. These are the types of markets I've been talking about, right? Apart from that, financial intermediaries. What's the basic purpose of a financial intermediary? Don't say financial intermediation, I know. Apart from that. Yeah. That's financial intermediation, I think. Apart from that, financial intermediaries, what are the basic functions? Why do we need financial intermediaries? The process. Intermediation is the basic process. Risk. Yes, so we discussed the functions of a financial intermediary. See, very basic stuff, financial intermediation. Apart from that, remember risk reduction, aggregation, maturity transformation. Why do I say so? Risk reduction. So rather than, so if I have excess money, no, I have deficit. You have excess, right? If you have excess money and I have deficit money, I can't go and ask from a person who I don't know. And definitely a person who I don't know will not give it to me. So as a result, if there's a third party well reputed who can interconnect between these two parties, that would help. So that will reduce the risk also. And then if I need 50 billion rupees and 100 people get together and give 2 million and likewise, so aggregation part happens. Right? Apart from that, maturity transformation. So you might go and deposit in the bank for like 3 months. Whereas I need a house, so I need a home loan of 10 years. So your money, which is deposited for 3 months, how can I go and ask for 10 years? Right? So that function was maturity transformation. Then what? Liquidity surplus. What was liquidity? What was liquidity? Yes. Ease of converting something into cash was considered as liquidity. So is liquidity important? Do banks need to be liquid? Don't want. You people go and deposit and not ask him back no money. Ask him back after some time. So bank does not want to be liquid. Is that the case? Bank needs liquidity. Why? Why do banks need liquidity? Yeah. Bank needs liquidity. If liquidity is not there, banks will not survive. Remember. Right? For every bank, they have short-term debt obligations to meet. Right? So all around the country, people go and deposit the money in the bank, but some part of the economy will be withdrawing as well. So you might go and deposit money in the bank, but I'm going in the evening and withdrawing from the ATM. Right? So give it to me, short-term debt obligations. Bank should have liquid cash. So liquidity is a must. So businesses, we discussed in terms of businesses, we have surpluses and deficits, and in terms of, I'm not going to talk about it. In terms of the government also, we have surpluses and the deficits. So what are the surpluses for a government? In terms of the government perspective, what are the surpluses? How do government raise revenue? Taxation, apart from that, treasury bills, that's not revenue. That's not fair. Okay. There's a difference. Government raises revenue through taxation, whatever from the investments they have made, sovereign bonds or whatever, from worker remittance, that's revenue. Government money supply is through treasury bills. That is not revenue. Right? If government needs money, they can raise money as far as they need through treasury bills and bonds, as I explained today. Right? But that is not profits, no, that's not revenue. Right? So the government can't keep that whole money, no, that's an obligation. They need to pay back. Clear the difference? Right? So the government having surpluses like this, and the government has deficits also. So when the government has deficits, who is the banker to the government? Central bank. So through treasury bill auctions and likewise, they will raise. What's the basic difference between debt market and equity market? Debt market and equity market difference. Debt market is for, I can help. Debt market is for debt instruments and equity market is for equity instruments. So the difference, shares are traded where you get the dividends as the return. So debt market is where you trade debt instruments, you will be receiving what? Interest as the return. So in terms of tax, which is more beneficial? In terms of tax, those who say debt, those who say equity, those who say nothing. In terms of taxation, debt market is beneficial. Why? I did showed you the P&L format and explained, no? Right? So whatever the dividends being paid is after taxation. Right? But whatever the interest is being paid is before taxation. So as a result, which one is more beneficial? Debt market instruments. Right? So then when it comes to the monetary policy and the, this is important. Factors to look at when you are making a investment or whatever. What are the factors? What are the factors you are looking at when you are making an investment? Firstly, yield or the return. Right? So you'll have to check on the return, and then the risk, amounts involved, whether you can, the divisibility factor. Then time period funds are available, liquidity, and the transaction costs. Right? The factors to look at. Okay? So what else we discuss? Types of financial products. I don't want to. Right. Net dividend yield, all these equations and stuff, be thorough with. I don't know whether the questions would come, but I'm just giving you advice to be thorough with. Right? Right. So what else? What else? Yes, you can ask questions. I can give you like 2 minutes maximum. What are the questions coming in the paper? One question. You can ask. No, that's not difficult, man. That's not difficult. It's easy. So again, yes. The financial system part, the central bank functions, how the banks operate, banks do functions, capital adequacy and everything. So I explained it today. Okay. So that's about it. That's the small revision that I've got a question. Do we get calculations related to gross redemption yield? Can be maximum of one question. Gross redemption yield, I think no. No, it's like calculating the present value. No present value calculation. No, Vidusha. Right, then that's about it. Right, so mock exam, I don't want to talk about it actually. Listen. So that's just 30 questions, right? You can do it simply and come. Try to do the maximum number of questions. Score the mark because they'll be sending me the result sheet, right? Along with the names, telephone numbers, emails, and everything, they'll be sending the scores. Whatever the questions you got it wrong and a complete analysis, right? They'll be sending me. So that's one thing. And in terms of the syllabus, guys, we have completed two major areas. This demand and supply, price mechanism and all that. And then about the financial system basics. So that is what we discussed was microeconomics. What is microeconomics? What is micro and macro? Which one is bigger? Macro is bigger. Right. So we have looked at the smaller picture already. Demand and the supply. Microeconomics part we have like done almost. I'll be starting off with the new part, macroeconomics, from next week onwards, which is like when it comes to the country, aggregate demand, aggregate supply, national income, lot of complex stuff, but interesting, really interesting. I'll further make it interesting, right? So I'll be uploading the tudes and stuff by the mid of the week, right? So good luck with your mock exam. Do it in the way you need. And get ready for the next section and come, right? Which is macroeconomics. Okay. So we have like almost completed 30% of the syllabus. And we'll be starting off with the next part and we'll be like going at a phase. Because we have like another 3 months, I think. Classes, no? July, August, September only. So get ready and start working and start studying and everything. So if you need help, you just tell me. And good luck and thank you. Bye. You can go. Right. Okay. Okay.